and I did some research. And what I discovered is kind of bonkers crazy. Am I alone here? I don't imagine that I am, but I don't know. All right, let's get into this. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Cliff, and this is Life with MS. Well, I had a very unnerving discovery last night. Actually, it's been the last 2 nights. I guess I haven't really realized how bad my issues with MS have gotten until this little book helped quantify it. Space Ghost from 1966. Now, a neighbor gave this to me thinking it would be a fun read for my child, who's 8 years old. And we do a bedtime story every night, but I usually make it up on the go. But we thought we'd try something new, and we'd start reading a couple of existing stories. I found it very difficult to read from this book. And the text is huge. It's not like that's part of the issue. But I couldn't get the words out, and I couldn't read them right, and I couldn't track them right. And it was very, very difficult to actually read it. And then my 8-year-old said to me, he said, "Dad, you're doing a terrible job reading." And I had to agree. I said, "Yeah, it's really bad." And I thought, well, maybe it's the vernacular that it's written in from 1966. Maybe it's the grammatical flow. I don't know. And so then I had my wife come in and read it. And Andrea sat down, and she just breezed right through it, made total sense of it. And I thought, oh crap, like things have gone very awry with cognitively or with my eyes or something. Admittedly, I do have very bad optic neuritis, but there was something else going on here. The information wasn't processing and I couldn't get it out through my mouth. And it was just a bunch of jarbled junk. So that got me wondering, is this a thing with MS? As MS progresses, does it become more difficult to even just read pages in a book? And I'm not talking about comprehend them. Of course, that is going to be an issue with cog fog and all that stuff, right? But like just processing the information where you can repeat it and then comprehending it. I mean, I read 2 chapters out of this 2 nights in a row. Couldn't remember a single thing I read right after I read it because I just wasn't processing it. And that was very surprising to me. But the fact that I just took forever to read it was really crazy. I've always been really good at reading. This begs the question, is this a thing connected to multiple sclerosis? My guess is yes. However, I wanted to find out, so I went out and I did some research. And what I discovered is kind of bonkers crazy. And if you have MS, well, according to my research, this affects probably 66% of us out there. And if you have primary progressive MS, it can be upwards of 90%. So let's dig into this and see what's going on. When we talk about issues with it, a lot of people think it's physical or problems with mobility. And they're not wrong. I mean, that's a huge part of living with MS. But I beg the question, what if the most profound, most life-disturbing part of multiple sclerosis is one we can't even see? Now, we're used to dealing with invisible symptoms, but this one is on a different level. I don't know, it just freaked me out how bad it has become, and I wasn't aware of it. And maybe it's scary because, well, our society is built on the written word. And so if we can't process the written word well, that's very unnerving. And of course, if it's unnerving, it's stressful, and stress adds to our MS symptom load. Now, the struggle to read, and we're not just talking about blurry vision, though that can be part of it. This is a deep cognitive challenge that makes reading incredibly frustrating. And get this is not some rare fringe symptoms. The numbers are kind of staggering. We're talking upwards of 66%, like I mentioned before. Okay, so what is going on in the brain that causes this? And to get to that, we need to pop the hood and see what's going on with the internal wiring of the brain. I'm assuming most of you know that basically MS is throwing a wrench in the engine and shorting out the wires by taking away the insulation, and the electrical signals are going all over the place. So they're not getting where they need to be. A process better known as demyelination, right? And I actually discovered that this process of demyelination, which causes all kinds of signals to go all over the place, has got a scientific name, which I didn't know this, and it is called foundational bottleneck. How did I not know this? I've been diagnosed for 6 years. I'm an engineer by nature, but foundational bottleneck, I think that's a really cool term for basically what's happening. It's like all the traffic's trying to go into one area and it cannot get through because the myelin is disturbed, or it's just going the wrong direction once it gets there. Like everybody's taking an off ramp and not getting where they need to go. It's the perfect term for it. It's like the main highway into your brain city center is suddenly down to one lane. Everything, and I do mean everything, kind of gets backed up behind it. And that traffic jam sets off a domino effect, right? And that domino effect sets off a traffic jam sort of effect or a cognitive cascade of sorts. And because of that, everything slows down. Cognitive processes slow down. The ability to speak, the ability to speak slows down, and the ability to comprehend slows down. Everything is coming in slower. And this is where I start feeling it. The brain actually has to work a lot harder to maintain attention. And so that 2 chapters I read for my kid the other night was, I said 2 chapters is enough for you, but really it was enough for me. I was wiped out after just 2 chapters, and I didn't even comprehend what I read. I just read it out loud. If I had tried to pay attention and actually figure out what was going on in the story, keep track of the characters, it would have been even more exhausting. But if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, because I'm not describing it accurately, I'm going to try to describe what it feels like. Maybe that will help. Okay, slow processing speed means I can't keep up with what's going on in the story. This might be why I don't like heavily in-depth movies either, like Lord of the Rings. I can't keep up with all the characters and what's happening. I find that frustrating, boring, and also I don't like to sit in one spot for 3 hours. And if I think about the characters in the long run, I can't really remember what any of them have done because I never really paid enough attention to begin with because the amount of effort that it takes to make the characters worthy of my attention, and therefore, a lot of the times the stories don't make sense. That's kind of what was happening with this book the other night. While it was an interesting story from a high level and it had some cool pictures in it, I was just like getting introduced to all these new characters like Space Ghost and Gibbs and all. Can't even remember, but there were like 6 or 7 characters in there and they were all responsible for different stuff. I couldn't keep track of it. And my kid is sitting there, he's just like fascinated and asking questions about the characters. And I'm like, okay. I don't really know, dude. So then I found myself rereading this stuff over and over to try to understand what was going on. I realized this is a kid's book. I should not be this deep into a kid's book and not have any idea of what the actual situation is. Have you experienced that? Have you experienced a decline? Comment below if you have experienced a decline in your cognitive processing, which wouldn't be surprising, but also if just reading like a children's book has become very difficult or super exhausting. Am I alone here? I don't imagine that I am, but I don't know. So it's turned from like enjoying a book to like literal physical and mental barriers. The optic neuritis is another thing. Now I mentioned I was having an issue tracking the words. I don't know if I perceived that and it was a problem with the information going around in my brain or if my eyes were actually having an issue tracking the words with the optic neuritis. And I found myself reading the same word like 2 or 3 times because I couldn't find my way on the line, almost like I think some dyslexics sort of describe it, but at the same time, like I'm not dyslexic. I had never had issues with that in the past. But dang, this was really hard. Are there parts of MS that mimic dyslexia or vice versa? This is really freaking hard. And you've gotten this far in the video and you're not familiar with optic neuritis. It's when the optic nerve gets inflamed and the results in the vision is either blurry or hazy, and sometimes there's a smudge or in the line of sight, and that one's really annoying. I'm going to do a whole nother episode on that where I'm going to walk you through optic neuritis, but not from a technical level, from an experience and perspective level. That's a video coming soon. Also with the optic neuritis, the colors can look really washed out. That was interesting too, because we were in a brightly lit room when I was reading the other night. I was reading black and white text, or more yellow and black because the book's really old. So the pages are kind of yellowed. As I would look over at the comic illustrations, sometimes for a brief second, they would appear black and white before they came into color. This is so strange. Now, is this age or is it MS? Who knows? But again, it's another one of these issues with MS that makes it so tough. It's like I look perfectly fine on the outside, I think, but on the inside, I'm kind of a hot MS. Or as my wife said, she made me this shirt the other day. She said, what does it say? My brain had a party, but nobody cleaned up the MS. She's so corny that way. I love it. Okay. The scary thing about what's happening with my vision and my cognitive processing is while it can happen in MS, it becomes almost a certainty as the MS progresses with age. Now, again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a healthcare provider. I'm just a bald guy sharing his MS experience. So this is not medical advice. If you really need answers to these types of questions and you're concerned about similar symptoms, talk to your neurologist because he or she is definitely the expert. It's not all bad news here. I found this isn't completely hopeless. There are some things we can do, and I have been doing them without even really thinking about it. So I was relieved to find that, yeah, there are some ways to assist with this situation of cognitive decline and having these problems with our vision and optic neuritis and all that. Now, they're not fixes. They're more workarounds. And what I found were two different categories of strategies that the experts use. One is restorative, which kind of makes sense. Think of it kind of like a gym for your brain where it exercises those muscles and keeps them strong.
Do you even lift, bro?
And then there's the compensatory strategies, which I'm assuming relates to compensating. And these are a bunch of little hacks that I think a lot of us have developed to basically work around our issues. So the restorative might be like memory drills or puzzles, things like that. Attention training programs, real targeted brain exercises. And then the compensatory stuff is stuff we can do today. Things like setting reminders on our phones, using voice memos, which I use a lot of. I keep track of everything. I write everything down. And the irony is I can hardly read it once I write it down, but I do a lot of audio notes well. And then there's checklists, right? And those are things we learn like in grade school and we kind of forget them over time. But I use them a lot. Even making these videos, I use checklists. If you've noticed lately in the last couple of videos that I've produced, I didn't follow my checklist and I accidentally turned off the commenting functions. And so I went back and turned them back on when people mentioned it, mainly my wife. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share if you found this valuable because all that will definitely help. Also, comment below. Do you experience this stuff? I want to know. And one of the other things I found, and this was a specific recommendation, is when you're reading, only read, 3 to 4 pages at a time, put it down, go rest for a while, and then come back to it so it doesn't completely drain you. And I've tried that. That actually works pretty well. So that's a pro tip right there. We just need to do things at our own MS pace. And lastly, there's this term about building a cognitive reserve. And this is the idea that there are other things we can do to strengthen our brain muscle and that will help build our brain elasticity and make things work better. No, but what are those things? And what I found, regular exercise, especially cardio, as it noted, basically keeps your brain well fueled with nutrients and keeps it actively working. Doing puzzles, learning a language, both of those I like to do. I don't really like to do puzzles as much as I do learning languages. Those are super fun.
Nukne MS Tlingan Hol Dajatla.
And picking up that guitar you've been meaning to play, which I'm getting back into. And from my layman take on this thing, I basically deduce that anything that challenges the brain and keeps it active without inducing a ton of stress is a positive. And that leads me to a final thought. Well, this is an invisible thing. And you and I, because we have MS, we are very good at dealing with this invisible thing and learning how to manage it. But I think we have to know we have it before we can manage it. And it was just a huge shock for me to find out that I don't want to say declined, but yeah, I guess declined a little bit in the last couple of years to the point that it's hard to read a book and comprehend it. That's terrifying. But hopefully now that I know that I'm dealing at that level, maybe I'll get tested and they can say, yeah, that's definitely a problem. And I need to start doing other types of like mental work or something. But are you experiencing something similar? And what did you do about it if you've had success managing it? I'm very curious. And so is the community. So that's it for right now. I just wanted to get that off my chest and talk to you guys about it. I love your comments. I love where we're going with this whole community thing. We're really doing well. I've got some new stuff coming out very soon that I hope you'll find entertaining and educational. If you like this kind of format, comment below. I love the feedback as always. And last, I just wanted to mention Andrea's been working super hard on creating really fun, super original shirts around MS. They're funny, they're campy, they're corny, they're just punny and great. Ones like the one I just showed you. I'm going to leave a link to that store below. You can order those and they will ship right away, which is really cool. And I don't know, I'd love your thoughts about that as well. We thought it would just be fun to like have some neat shirts, not things that just said like I'm an MS warrior, but things that kind of brought some humor to the disease, because at the end of the day, I think we all just want to laugh a little bit because it's so hard just to get through the day. A little bit of a giggle might be helpful. I'm Cliff. This is Life with MS. Talk to you guys soon, and I'm out.